for some people, our version of Christianity, so to speak, our walk with God is the only walk they'll see. So we don't want to be like, oh, that Christian bloke, he's really draining on me. I don't know how, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it can even be a form of evangelism for I was going to say for Gentiles, but for non-Christians.
Welcome to the Bible in 1 Year podcast, brought to you by two Brits and a Bible.
Today is day 328, covering Romans 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Nice. So there's so much. I was kind of nervous about doing Romans because for me it's so similar to Proverbs, where there's just so much good crammed into one book. I'm like, how on earth are we going to chat about this like coherently for 10 minutes without it being just so rushed? But we'll see how it goes. Maybe this will be one of our post Bible in 1 year like little sections or something that we do, is just expanding on this book because it's so flipping good.
Yeah.
So, written by Paul, predominantly to a Gentile church, written in and around AD 57 from when he was in Corinth. And it's kind of to introduce himself to the Roman church as he'd not got there yet. And the aim of it was to help Jews and Gentiles hear and understand the gospel from their own backgrounds. He already knew quite a lot of people in Rome, which becomes very apparent in the last chapter of the book, just from his other travels. People like Priscilla and Aquila, just because they're names that just keep coming up and they're pretty memorable. So yeah, it's cool. Like I said, so much crammed in here. In fact, I think this is one of Romans 8 and Romans 6 are two of my favorite chapters. I think I mentioned them to you when I first sent you that Bible. So
Yep. Yeah.
really. So yeah, it kicks off for me with Romans 1:12, which is saying that we should be mutually encouraged by each other's faith. And I think that is such a massive thing. There are some people, I think that everyone knows, and maybe if you don't, you're one of these people, that it's just like it's draining to have a friendship with some people because it feels like they're just constantly sapping your energy. You don't leave feeling like refreshed and renewed. And I think it's just, this is so true for faith as well. Some people can really encourage our faith. Some people just leave us going, flip, that was tiring.
Yeah.
And just need to be careful to be mutually encouraging.
Yeah, that's great point straight off the bat, Mr. Peters. And that's roughly what my first point was. We should be building each other up as Christians for sure. And I guess it's also links to something you said before on the program, like, for some people, our version of Christianity, so to speak, our walk with God is the only walk they'll see. So we don't want to be like, oh, that Christian bloke, he's really draining on me. I don't know how, you know what I mean? So it can even be a form of evangelism for I was going to say for Gentiles, but for non-Christians. Anyways, great point. So then, the Romans 1 verse 17, just a little point, the righteous will live by faith. So just remember, the more we lean into God and his plan for us and for his creation, the more righteous we become at the same time. Pretty cool little thing there.
Yeah, for sure. Just cracking on because we've got a lot of stuff to get through. Romans 1:20, this is chatting about since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood from what's been made, so that people are without excuse. It reminds me, there's a good friend of mine who she is not Christian yet. She's been going through some absolute just hard ass times. And right now she's posting on Facebook fairly constantly these amazing, intricate things from nature, like insects and plants and birds and stuff like that. And it's like you're so in awe of creation, but you just can't see the creator. And it's this like, come on, man. And I've had a few conversations with her. And it's just like she's into astronomy and stuff like that. And it's like, oh my days, like the one who created them stars, like, how are you this close? But yes,
I know.
fun.
It is crazy, isn't it? It is crazy. I always think of David Attenborough and stuff, like not a Christian and yet has spent his whole life in awe of creation.
Yeah.
So it's sad, really. It is, and it's frustrating. But you never know. Like, I like your optimism. She's not Christian yet. That's the way to think about it.
Always.
So then, Romans 1 verse 22. Although they claim to be wise, they became fools. And I just think if we look at where we are as a society and as a culture, it's there, right? People all think they're so smart and like sharing all these like clever, witty things on social media, but they're actually becoming sort of more and more foolish, and we can't even agree on basic things anymore as a society.
Absolutely, man.
Pretty
That's
crazy.
so true. so true. It actually links perfectly into my next point, which is Romans 1:28. Furthermore, just as they did not think it worthwhile to retain the knowledge of God, so God gave them over to a depraved mind. And it's this concept of retaining the knowledge of God. Like, in history, we were so aware of who he was and his nature and his qualities and stuff, but right now we just haven't retained that. And I think particularly in Ontario at the minute, there's so little taught about it in our schools, probably around the world. I just don't know the rest of the curriculum that well, but it's like we're just screwing it up, man. Like you said, we're so caught up in our own wisdom and our own knowledge that we're just forgetting to actually teach the most important thing there is.
Yeah. And it's crazy to think how far it's come, because like Harvard and Oxford and Cambridge and places like that, originally the reason that they were founded as universities was a godly study of like nature and science and stuff. Like they're all founded on Christian principles of like investigating the world to better understand God. And yet now there's so little God in academia.
Yeah.
It's really scary.
And
So
infinite generation, right? Because when we were growing up at school, like there was so much assembly, singing hymns and all that stuff. It's literally in that one generation that it's all just been completely eradicated.
it is crazy, yeah. But then if you think about it, like our grandparents and great grandparents and stuff were predominantly Christian, but our parents and us typically not as Christian at all, which is really sad. I like living in Texas, put it that way. Plenty of Christians here. Anyway, so then we will eventually get out of Romans 1, people. Romans 1:32, just very quickly. Although they know God's righteous decree that those who do such things deserve death, they not only continue to do those very things, but also approve of those who practice them. So we get to a stage that we condone outright sin and we cross a line. Like that happens in society all the time as well now, right? Like bad behavior is celebrated and good behavior is sort of, mocked almost.
Yeah.
So, yeah, lots of wisdom in Romans, like you said, mate.
Yeah, very true, man. I keep trying to work out when to give you a that's good. Truth is, it's all good so far. So it's just this whole episode. I'm into Romans 3:10-18. Why don't you give me your part on it? Because you got the same one.
Just a quick one from me. So Romans 3:10, as it is written, there is no one righteous, not even one. So part of the path, right, is just understanding you are a broken sinner, and so is everyone else, right? And that links to what I just said about how we sort of actually approve even of sin now, because we don't want to admit that we're sinners, or some people don't want to admit they're sinners, right? So they'd rather be like, oh, that sin's fine, it's good, don't worry about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is just one of the examples where Paul goes through there between Romans 3:10 all the way through to 18. And in that section, he references, where am I from? C. He references Psalms 14:53, Ecclesiastes, Psalms 5, Psalm 140, Psalm 10, Isaiah, Psalm. He references so many pieces of scripture. He didn't have a convenient little book like this to carry around with it. It's just ingrained knowledge, and that is studying the scriptures every day that gets you to that point.
Yeah, that's awesome, dude. Yeah, love that. Keep going, man. Go for it.
So I have a couple more into Romans 4. So Romans 4, this is kind of, I really like this because this is then chatting about Abraham's faith and how his faith was credited to him as righteousness before he was circumcised. And this is what's like being able to be father of the Gentiles and the Jews, because this is who the Jews all look up to as the father of their faith, but actually his faith initiated and originated before he was circumcised, which technically would have made him a Gentile.
Right.
It's just so cool the way Paul brings that out to unify the church that's so divided over this one point.
That's good, man.
Oh, cool. And then my last one, for verse 14, it's then in here saying, for those who depend on the law are heirs. Faith means nothing and the promise is worthless. More stuff that we've already touched on here today, basically saying that if we automatically inherit our salvation through like our parents and our grandparents, it means very little to us unless we find it for ourselves. Right. Similarly to like people that come into wealth just because their parents have been super wealthy, the concept of money just means far less unless they've had to be taught it, had to work for it. And so actually it's really important that we find that salvation for ourselves rather than just being baptized as a baby, as we chatted about a few days ago, right?
Love it. Yeah. Very quick one from me. This isn't quite the gospel in one verse, but nearly. Romans 3:28, we maintain that a person is justified by faith apart from the works of the law. I just think that's a really important little nugget to chuck in there.
Yes, it is. Tomorrow, day 329, Romans 5, 6, and 7. Pick up your